Hi, kiddo. How was your day? Well, that sounds appropriate, doesn't it? I mean, I feel like it is the season for that, after all. Do I ever? Well, if I were to tell you a ghost story, those would be a bit old school. Let's call it that. Hmm. I feel like there is a lot of them who have this similar theme and ideas throughout. But one of them that you haven't heard, I suppose? I mean, there is the story of Orpheus. He famously went down to the place of the dead to retrieve his wife. It didn't work out. He looked at her, which apparently is a big no-no, and then, well, bad things happened. I feel like you may have heard that one before. Hmm, yes, I would, wouldn't I? But more rarely, though, there is talk of Izanagi and Izanami, the creators of the first land. This is from the Kujiki, so the first land in that story would be Japan, square and simple. And since they were among the very first in their story, there was no such a thing as death at all. Well, that changed, though, with the birth of the fire god, who promptly was the death of Izanami, his mother. Quite so. But, of course, Izanagi was not about to accept such a thing, so he went down into the kingdom of the dead. She was there, and she was fairly ready to accompany him to the land of the living, but she had just eaten, and she needed to rest for a while, and asked him to promise not to peek at her while she was resting. Mm-hmm. I feel like we already know how that is going to go, even the first time we hear it, yes? So true. And, by the way, this is also very reminiscent of Persephone, who got kidnapped by the god of the dead in Greek myth and eventually had to stay because she had eaten. That is actually a whole thing, and maybe a story for another time. A fall time, I suppose. But anyway, Izanagi could, of course, not just stand there in the dark of the kingdom of death and wait patiently for whatever reason. Well, I guess the severity of being dead was something he was unfamiliar with, at least so far. Yeah, that is a peculiar concept. And as one would expect, there is a lot of things that may seem like peculiar concept involved here. There's peaches used to ward off evil spirits. And of course, the all-important comb of Izanagi. I think it's the kind of comb, more like a hair clip, something you have in your hair, and think pictures of Japanese people. I don't know if that helps. I mean, old pictures, obviously. This is mythical times we're talking about. But something you have in your hair that is also a comb. Well, it becomes strongly relevant, and it's such a powerful symbol in this story because comb in Japanese is made up from two signs, and if you split it into two words, you get pain and death. Yeah, for this reason, actually, I think people are a little bit careful with combs in general, but that's a bit speculative. I don't really know the customs around it, but it does seem to fit quite well into a story like this, which is why it is slightly less surprising than that when Izanagi finds himself in the dark and can't stand not to look at his wife anymore, he lights his comb on fire. Yeah, I feel like there's something very poetic going on here because he is lighting on fire the pain of death. Basically burns with sorrow. But what he sees is rotten flesh, a very dead version of his wife, who is writhing with. Well, she is a dead mess, basically. And if this can even be called a ghost story, then that right there, his dead wife, is the ghost. And he, of course, calmly and quietly exits the room, and this is never discovered ever. She does, yes. And because that was the one promise that he had just made after they were reunited, after she died, one can see that she would be a little bit upset by this. I mean, just generally don't look at your wife if she's asking you not to. But also, there's a theme going on here. We see it in Orpheus, we see it here, we even see it in the Bible with Lot and his wife when they are escaping the doomed city as it's being smitten, I guess. And his wife turns to look back. And as punishment, she is turned to a statue of salt. Yes, somehow, if you are to bring life into death or bring somebody back, don't look back too soon. I think it's very poignant because you can, in fact, be stuck and become a statue, somehow still looking back, missing out on life. Don't don't skip out on the Halloween party. It's Johnny's point all over again. Live life to the fullest, because death, pretty much. I mean, I would much prefer a candle, some cozy times with friends, a cup of tea over a Halloween party, but make it a metaphorical party, I guess. Oh, right, right. Well, so Izanagi also likes tea and candles and the like. He lights his comb and everything breaks loose, and his former wife sends the shikome after him. It's some sort of hag, demon thing slash things. It's a little unclear. Well, from there on, it's basically running and throwing things at her. I'm sure the things he's throwing are very relevant and important, and his headband turns into grapes, and the peaches. It does get weird. I suppose if you lived in ancient Japan, it made more sense. And whatever he throws, the shikome consumes. Yeah, and he does also throw pieces of his comb, which does hurt the demon and is also consumed. Eventually, of course, he does escape, but on his own. Well, at that point, he seals the path to the kingdom of the dead with a giant boulder using all his divine might and all that. Yes, the giant boulder sealing way to the kingdom of the dead is also poignant and recognized. But this time, unlike many of the other stories, his wife is in fact on the other side and is now very mad at him for both breaking his promise and, in fact, abandoning her in there. Well, she is a powerful goddess and shouts at him a dreadful curse that she will kill 1,000 people every day as punishment for what he did. Well, he responds by saying that he will give life to 1,500 people every day. I mean, I've heard something about fertility in Japan, but I think it's striking here that he is detached now. It used to be about personal tragedy, but now he has truly the perspective of a god where people are just numbers and replaceable assets in part of some larger scheme of things. I think that is kind of unusual. Maybe it's because many myths have the divine beings being so human, or maybe it's just because those are the stories I remember. But the one parallel that sticks out to me is actually from Job in the Old Testament. Well, Job lost a lot of status symbols, and then it ends with him getting them back in multiples. Yeah, the thing is, in a modern story, if you had 5 cars and all of your 5 cars were destroyed and you lived on the street and you end the story with 10 cars, yeah, everything is clearly better now, assuming you like cars. But they did the same, like, he lost all of his livestock and also all of his children, and it was just like he he has twice of that now. Yes, including the children. It's such a detached perspective. Feels like story pieces, you know? Yeah, it's weird how death is both this huge factor in how life works that is impersonal and giant, but it's also this everyday thing that we have to grapple with on a very personal level. Actually, when I think about it, there is this part of the story that it's been told in different ways. Are sort of in some versions during this intense life or death chase, Izanagi stays to pee on a tree. And that's one of those, it's so silly, but it's also so everyday that, well, I guess he needed to pee. And it's just, you know, the weird silliness is that death is like that. You still have all these mundane things to care about. Even though this monumental loss has suddenly struck you down, you know? Yeah. Well, I think while the whole push and pull in the end, with lots of people dying and even more people being born, like that's a slight victory to creation and life in some arbitrary sense, but it still means that death is something deeply personal that we need to grapple with. Yeah, it's an odd way to express it, but I feel like the story still makes good points. Just again, I feel like maybe you have to be an ancient Japanese person to truly appreciate it. But front and center in this story is Izanagi using pain and death, set on fire and even weaponized. His grief and frustration used to tackle this situation, and it doesn't really help. The loss isn't fixed. She does not come with him. But he leaves her there and goes on to still create life. It's sobering somehow. We can't solve death. We simply have to relate to it and accept it as a reality. He doesn't undo the curse, he doesn't undo his wife's death. He just adds more life to the world and has to consider it a win. Yeah, I think that's our way to do it too. Something more like that, yes. And I think it's poignant to be able to just add to the good parts and be deliberate with that. And that is all we can do. Yeah. Sometimes we have this thing, all's well that ends well, you know? Mm-hmm. But I feel like we're skipping out of all the days between there. Things go up and things go down, and every day counts. Everything counts, not just the ending. And that's part of the beauty of life. Yeah. If the ending was all that counted, we all know how life ends. But before it does, there's so much good, so much that we get to live. Even a short life is still a life. Even a day is still a day. If we're not one of the 1,000, we get another one. Yeah. And I hope you know, no matter how life goes for you, that you add so much life. You give so much. You are so much good. Well, that's why I'm able to say it. Because I know you. I see the tremendous good in you, better than some random passerby would do. I know you, and I love you, because you're you, because of who you are. And no matter what you do or who you become, that will not change. That is the constant. Always, every day, more life than death because of you. I love you, kiddo. Every day of life.